How's it going, folks? Had a couple of online friends curious as to the soil blends I'm using in the wicking barrels, the root pouches and the pots, and also the seed raising mix we use. So here we go, I'll give you a bit of a quick look. To begin with, our potting mix is pretty basic. I don't use soil from the ground here. Soil tends to be too heavy, doesn't drain freely enough in container gardens, so I go out and I buy a fairly decent quality potting mix. We get one for a fairly decent price here. I think it's about $16 for 60 litres or so. It's a nice clean potting mix. You don't see any rubbish in there like you do with some. I use that as my base to give me some free draining quality to the mix, and then the other component is the compost from the cage behind me here. Now the compost as it stands, you'll see in a clip that I shot yesterday before Mr. Michael turned up, the compost, when it gets wet, it tends to hold its water and it doesn't drain very freely. So all the little bits of organic matter and the sand that's in the potting mix does tend to break up the compost a little bit, and it allows it to drain a lot freer. So I just mix those two components, the potting mix and the compost, together 1:1, and we've had some really great growth on a couple of plants this season with it, and also last season, so I'm pretty much well sold on that basic blend. Now there are other additives you can add into your potting mix, and I've done it myself before. If you don't have access to compost, you don't make it yourself, but if you want to make up a fairly nutritious blend, see if you can buy some worm castings and add in with your potting mix, and yeah, you'll be surprised. That's how we grew to begin with years ago, Bianca and I, when we were renting, and we had phenomenal success with just that blend. Potting mix and worm castings. Another thing you can add in is commercial compost if you're at a stretch. It just does boost the amount of nutrients available to the plants. Not all potting mixes are very nutritious. A lot of them that I've seen, the cheap ones, they're a lot of bark filler, and that's about it. Other things you can add in, Biochar, I've done that in the past as well. I like to add it to increase water holding capacity of the soil blend. Biochar is basically carbon. There are a lot of little hollow pores in there to hold water, and also to hold things like microorganisms, bacteria and fungi and that sort of thing. So it can be a good way to get some carbon into the soil, and also to improve your water holding capacity. Rock dust. Rock dust is something I'd add to a wicking barrel or a large container garden, something that was going to be around for more than one season. Some of these wicking barrels, I haven't changed the soil out in 2 or 3 years. I just keep adding in more compost or manure on the top of it. The worms come up and feed on it, and yeah, the castings go through the soil within the barrels. So in that situation, I'd probably add some rock dust in there if I could afford it, and we had some here. Because you need bacterial activity to break down and work on the rock dust, other microbes and fungi as well, to make those minerals plant available. Some are plant available straight away, but a lot of them need some sort of microorganism activity to work on them, to break them down and make them plant available. If I had rock dust, what I'd be doing is I'd be throwing it in my compost, because that way I know there's loads of microorganisms in there. They're just going to smash through the minerals, make them plant available, and when I use that compost out on the patch, hopefully the idea is that those minerals are available straight away. So that's something we'll probably be doing again down the line. Haven't used rock dust minerals for quite a while now. What I've been using instead is seaweed, or kelp, sorry. You can get a kelp powder here in Australia. There's a couple of different brands you can buy, and I have at times sprinkled that through, especially the fruiting plant mix, mainly because the brand that we buy has 16% potassium in it, so I definitely know the cucumbers react well, being a fruiting, flowering plant. There is one mix I like to make up especially for vegetable, and that's carrots. They like a nice loose blend, almost like a seed raising mix. The seed raising mix, you can have a look at it in a minute. A lot of sand in there just means that the carrot roots will grow nice and straight. The soil will part for them, and you don't end up with the gnarly looking carrots. I mean, they're fun to look at, but they're a real pain in the butt to peel. So I like a nice straight carrot if I can grow one. So we'll have a bit of a look at the container soil blend and also the seed raising start mix that I've been making up. And then I'll come back and I'll give you a bit of a rundown on how I feed the containers through the season. So just down in here in the wheelbarrow already, I've got around about 25 to 30 litres of the potting mix. Now just to give you a bit of a closer look, it's very friable stuff. You might be able to make out the red pellet down in there. And there's also some creamish looking ones, a bit like a worm cocoon. I don't know if you can make him out there. They're slow release fertilizers that are put in here. This is not certified organic by any means. One thing I do like about this is I don't see any inorganics like some potting mix, believe it or not, I've actually seen melted bits of plastic in. This stuff here is just full of, looks like sawdust and bark. There are some sand granules, and I know by itself it does grow a fairly decent plant. I'm just trying to enrich it by putting our own compost in. So what I might do is I'll grab some compost and just toss him in there, just to give you a look at the quality of the compost that we're using. There's a big root section, we don't really want that, it hasn't broken down too well. So this is the compost from our cage. It is fairly moist at the moment. There's a lot of worms in there, you might be able to make out a couple of small baby ones there. Down here we have some of these nice big red ones as well. Put him out of the sun, they don't like the sun too much. But this stuff here, just jam-packed full of worms. Very, very damp at the moment. Well, we had a fair whack of rain a couple of weeks ago, so a lot of this stuff hasn't dried out yet. More worms, and a cocoon as well. So this stuff here will have all the nutrients of, you know, the worm castings, the extra microbial activity in there, maybe a little bit of fungus. To make this compost I used a lot of lucerne hay or alfalfa hay, the Chinese elm trimmings, the horse manure, garden scraps, kitchen scraps, a poor deceased possum from out the front went in there, a couple of rats and a couple of cane toads. So all those nutrients are in this compost right here. So I'll just move the camera back and we'll finish filling up the compost. One of the things I'm trying to do as I go is break up all the large lumps of compost that are in here. I also like to use a garden fork to mix this rather than a shovel, mainly because if I was to use a shovel, I mean, it'd be mass murder on these poor worms. There's that many in here. So this is what it looks like after the compost has been mixed through, a load of organic matter. There's still worms in here. It's a very nice loose organic blend. Every now and then I come across a big wad of this stuff. It's just the compressed hay that hasn't quite broken down. I think that's great to add into there because it's going to add extra organic matter for the microbes to feed on and the compost worms to feed in turn on the microbes and whatnot. So one thing I found with the wicking barrels and the root pouches when we have them set up in the trays to wick water up into them, it really does help to have this nice organic rich blend. It just helps the water travel up into the root zone for the plants. I do find a couple of large bits of horse manure like this in there, but I mean there's nothing, just to break them up, add a bit more organic matter into the mix. So I thought I'd show you my basic seed raising mix. I've been using this one for a little while now. Tends to work alright. It's 1 part of my compost. Try and take out any of the big long bits and pieces, any sticks or twigs. If I see any large compost worms in there, whoa, I just dropped him, where'd you go? If I see any large compost worms in there, if he wants to stay on my finger, I try and put these guys back into the compost. Even though they will probably survive in here, I prefer they're not in here. Things like this though, this is a little worm cocoon just down in there. I don't know if you can make him out. I'll leave him in there because those little worms will hatch and there'll be food in here for them. I mean, the idea of having seeds raised in punnets or small containers is to have them out into the plot as soon as you can, so those worms will end up going out into the garden soon enough. Just have a bit of a quick look through here, and a couple of larger ones there. I think that's pretty much all of them. I've got a lot of them out before, so these guys can just go back into the compost. Now to that I'm adding, oh, there's another one. To that I'm adding 1 part of the bagged potting mix. So give this a good mix, get everything nice and combined. And then to that I'm going to add some coarse sand, so just a little bit to begin with. Just sprinkle over the surface, then work him in. The sand will just make sure that the punnets do have fairly good drainage. Might just add just a little bit more sand in. A little bit more. So there we go. There's a nice, fairly friable seed raising mix. So then it's just a matter of grabbing your punnets, or whatever you're going to use, your small pots, whatever, giving a bit of a tap on the bottom, getting that stuff to settle in, and there you go. So into one of these punnets I'm sowing out some toadskin melon or Christmas melon, and the other one is getting some bush cucumber seeds, and then they'll go and sit down in a tray. The tray's already got some Jimmy Nardello capsicums or peppers in them. The bottom of the tray has a little bit of water in it, and that water will wick up, keep the mix nice and moist, and there you go. So there you go, there's a bit of a look at the soil blend that we've made up. I hope you enjoyed that little quick look. Did you enjoy it, Blackie? Yeah, she enjoyed it. It is a very basic, simple blend to make up, and the plants seem to react to it very well. During the season though, obviously the nutrients in the containers will be used up, so there's a couple of different ways that I go about feeding them. The first one is a very, very basic compost tea. I don't actively aerate it or brew it over a period of time, add molasses or anything like that now. The idea behind compost tea for me now is to stretch the compost that I have out over all the different garden beds, barrels and containers we have around the place. If I was to take even that large circular cage of compost and spread it over all the gardens, I'd probably only do 3 or 4 of these big beds down the back here, and all the rest would miss out. So what I like to do is grab probably about a 4 litre or 1 gallon container of that compost, put it in a 60 litre barrel, put in some water, give it a good stir, get all those little fine solids suspended, and then go and use that as a liquid fertilizer of sorts around the patch. You know, it's better than no compost at all, I figure, so yeah, let's try and stretch it as far as I can. Another thing that you could add in is a seaweed fertilizer. I mentioned it before, or kelp, sorry. I've added that in on the flowering and the fruiting pots, potted plants especially, like the cucumbers. I've got a whole heap of capsicums in a little root pouch wicking garden in the hoop house at the moment, and they'll be getting it as well. The potassium in it just helps the flowers form and the fruit form. Not very high in nitrogen though, so they're not getting an overdose on nitrogen. Other additives that you could put in is obviously the store-bought ones. You can buy seaweed emulsions, you can buy liquid fertilizer if that's your bag, you know, go right ahead. Your plants aren't going to complain, I don't think. Another thing I do at the end of the season is I grab all those smaller pouches and containers, not the wicking barrels, toss them in the wheelbarrow, add in another batch of compost, give it a bit of a mix around, and then I basically refreshed it and I can use it again. Wicking barrels, like I mentioned before, I treat them a little bit differently, like this turmeric behind me here. What I tend to do there is I'll add in just the straight compost on top, and then I'll top water that in, and that tends to get the nutrients to leach down into the soil. So I hope that's helped you guys out who are curious as to how I make up the soil blends here. By all means, search around online. You're going to find you know, 101 different recipes for container growing soil mediums. It all depends on where you are, what's available in your neck of the woods around the world. I know that rock dust minerals are dirt cheap in some places, or relatively dirt cheap in some places in North America. Sea salt minerals as well. Different places also have different composting materials available. I know some places in the States, not all, have free compost and free timber mulch available to you, put on by your councils or your local municipal governing bodies. So check those resources out. It's just one of those things, you just got to make use of whatever you have locally available, I suppose, and just tinker around until you find a blend that works smash hot for you. So there you go. So if this is the first time you've seen one of our clips, feel free to hit that subscribe button and you'll get an email every time we post a clip to YouTube. You can come along and see what's going on in our small little backyard farm. If you've got any comments, questions or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Other than that, I hope you have got something out of this clip. Hope you're all well and happy, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers, folks. Just thought I'd finish off with a sneak peek at the flowers in this turmeric in this wicking barrel behind me here. They're a beautiful white flower, almost orchid-like when you look down at the lower flowers. Beautiful yellow throat there, and the petals have a nice pink tinge to the end. Now we've got that large one there. Now around the corner here, we battle through these leaves. There's another smaller one just in the centre there. There's another little one down here. And then over through these leaves, there's another one forming over there. So every year we get a beautiful display from this barrel. This barrel should have been harvested last season, but it wasn't. So yeah, we're just going to bandicoot out roots as we want them this year.